Mobile apps, they go live here in Louisiana tomorrow at 8 a.m. Central Time. So we're going to start there. Welcome on a voice who many of you are very familiar with. 23 years at ESPN. You heard him right here on this very radio station. Now he is the Chief Trends Officer and Brand Ambassador for Caesars Entertainment. Also hosts the Chop Shop podcast on YouTube with Mark Schlereth. It's Trey Wingo. Trey, we appreciate your time. How are you?
Doing great, guys, and really looking forward to the future with what's happening with mobile betting in Louisiana with the Caesars Sportsbook app. Really excited.
Trey, I can tell you there's a lot of people here who are really, really excited. It's a question we got often. It felt like, man, it was going to happen in the fall, and then it was going to happen in the winter. And, okay, by the playoffs, we'll have it. And it just kept getting pushed back. People are antsy, and they're ready. They are ready for tomorrow. We have a lot we want to get to you about the app. Also, got to get your take on the playoffs. It's been just a wild couple of weeks in the NFL. But I am curious how the transition has been from going somewhere like ESPN into Caesars. What's been the same? What's been different kind of in your new role?
You know, it's interesting, and I appreciate you asking that because it really, for me, hasn't changed at all. What I do for Caesars is basically what I did for NFL Live all those years, or covering the draft, or working with Mike Golick in the mornings. I'm not an odds guy. I don't set the odds. But I tell you why the odds are the way they are. Like, for example, why are the Chiefs 7-point favorites in the AFC title game over the Bengals when the Bengals beat them 3 weeks ago? Well, the Chiefs are a much better team at home, and Patrick Mahomes as a starter in the postseason is 7-1 at Arrowhead, and the only loss was because Dee Ford lined up in the neutral zone, negating a game-saving interception of Tom Brady in the 2018 AFC Championship game. So until someone beats that dude at Arrowhead, he's going to be the favorite. The Chiefs are going to be the favorites in that game.
Well said, Trey. Let's talk a little bit of sports betting. It's becoming incredibly mainstream. As you know, online and mobile goes live here in Louisiana on Friday, but the station that we're speaking to you on right now already has 2 sports betting programs, including this one. So we've seen a lot of growth in the industry, especially here locally, but how would you overall describe the growth of this industry from when you started working in sports media to right now?
Well, I think it's just more honest. Right? Like when I was doing NFL Live all those years before the Supreme Court ruling that allowed sports betting to be wherever people wanted to be, you know, we had to be very careful. If we were making projections for win totals, we couldn't say over, under. We could say more than or less than, you know. And in those situations, you couldn't even mention the Saints or the Panthers or the Falcons. You had to say New Orleans or Tampa Bay or Atlanta. You know, it was very cagey. And just think how fast things have happened. I think it was in 2012, Tony Romo was denied holding a fantasy football convention in a Vegas hotel. Mm-hmm. And now we have the Las Vegas Raiders. I just think we're just more open. We're on it. Like it's always been there. We're just acknowledging the thing that we always knew was there now.
What can we expect maybe more changes in sports because of this, right? I mean, with the more openness, not just in media, but I mean, is there a possibility now, like, for instance, do you think we start seeing detailed injury reports for college sports or something along those lines?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the injury report, right? Because let's be honest, the injury report exists for one reason and one reason only, to make sure the line is good. Yeah. You know, all these people that are like, oh, we shouldn't be you guys have been doing this forever. We're just being honest about it now. And quite frankly, it's good for the sport because if somebody had inside information about an injury and it wasn't shared publicly, that could change how someone's going to bet and the system could be rigged. So quite frankly, the fact that it's open and honest makes it more available and on board for everybody. And what you just said is also interesting because I think the next big thing that's going to happen, much in the same way we have a rules official on almost every broadcast crew now, I bet we're going to have a betting official or guru at some point. Why that changes what happens here, why that prop bet now becomes significant, or what that play does to the line and all that kind of stuff. Because in most places, the largest amount of sports gambling is in-game gambling. Here in the States, that makes up a very small amount. It's basically pre-game betting. But you look in Europe, and the line changes constantly during the game. And you can make bets based on how the game is being played out. And I think that's the next thing. So much like we have a Dean Blandino or whoever, whichever, Mike Pereira, whoever you want to have, I wouldn't surprise me if soon every broadcast outlet doesn't have a sharps guy giving them a little inside information as the game progresses.
Very interesting. Trey Wingo is our guest here on the early line, brand ambassador for Caesars Entertainment. And let's talk a little bit of Caesars here, Trey. Got a lot of momentum going for it. Peyton Manning and the rest of the Mannings joined on recently. You're over there. We see a lot of JB Smooth on our Twitter feeds all the time. But from the Caesars side of things, what has this whole process been like when it comes to a launch like this in each individual state, including Louisiana tomorrow?
But it's been so much fun for me because, like I said, a lot of the guys at Caesars, a lot of the people, rather, at Caesars, are people that I used to work with at ESPN. Kenny, you mentioned Kenny Mayne, myself, a guy who used to create all the Vista Sports Center commercials there. A guy named Spence Kramer is now working with Caesars to help them with all their stuff. Another guy that I worked with at Caesars, working with the ESPN, is now working with me at Caesars. And one of the CEOs or CFOs of William Hill Caesars is also someone that I used to work with at ESPN, and she's great. So it's been a lot of fun, and she's basically doing the same thing, just putting a different brand on it.
So, I mean, as Mario just said there, Caesars definitely has a lot of momentum everywhere. I mean, they came into Louisiana, guns a-blazing, billboards, got LSU, got the Saints.
Go big or go home,
Go
baby.
big or go home. Man. But, so, I mean, that leads to the very obvious next question. I mean, what's next? Now that the app's going live, what more can we expect from Caesars here in Louisiana?
Well, I think you're going to see more of a initial drive towards content. Like I do something called Trey's Trends every week, where you can catch it on all the Caesars Sportsbook social feeds and their YouTube channel, and I put it on my Twitter feed and Instagram as well. It's basically just providing content. And I think now that we've sort of launched with Caesars and we have so many great people with Caesars, we're going to become a bigger player in content that's going to be out there for people to consume on a bunch of different levels. And I think that's the next thing you're going to see.
Very interesting. And the playoffs should be very interesting again this weekend, Trey. Maybe one of the best weekends in the history of playoff football last weekend. It's going to be hard to follow up. But in the AFC Championship, there's a lot of interest around these parts, obviously, with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase doing what they're doing. Kansas City laying 7 at home against the Bengals with the total set at 54.5. The Chiefs looking to go to their 3rd straight Super Bowl, and the Bengals open the season as 80-1 long shots to win the Super Bowl, but they're just 2 wins away. I know a lot of people around these parts are going to wager now legally on the Bengals. Joe Burrow doing what he did in Baton Rouge, now in Cincinnati as a pro. How do you view this matchup?
Well, look, it's the team that's been there, done that, versus the team that's trying to do that. And just to put into perspective what Zach Taylor, Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase have done, they're the first franchise in NFL history to end a 30-plus year playoff win drought with consecutive playoff wins in the same season. So you want to talk about changing the culture. That's what Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Zach Taylor, the head coach, and T. Higgins and Joe Mixon and everybody in Cincinnati has done. But they're going up against a juggernaut. I mean, if that penalty I mentioned with Dee Ford, if that doesn't happen, we're talking about the Chiefs trying to go to a 4th straight Super Bowl, which has only been done one time. The Buffalo Bills, they ended up losing all 4. But we're talking about a historically great franchise here at this point, a historically great team, like on the echelon of the 70s Steelers, the 80s Niners potentially, the 90s Cowboys, the 2000s Patriots. If they get to a Super Bowl and win this, that's 2 out of 3. And that puts you on the Mount Rushmore of great franchises in the history of the NFL. And I love Joe and I love Jamar, and I think the future's really bright, but I don't think it's really bright for them on Sunday.
It's going to be a tough atmosphere as well in Arrowhead. That is just a house of horrors for many.
I'm glad you said that because Joe had something really funny to say this week. He was asked about crowd noise, and he goes, well, most SEC stadiums are louder than NFL stadiums. And he's right, except for Arrowhead. Arrowhead is an outdoor stadium, and it has the loudest recorded decibel level of any stadium anywhere. Like louder than the Caesars Superdome, louder than the stadium up in Seattle. To quote from Seinfeld, the crowd factor at Arrowhead is real and it's spectacular.
They take a lot of pride in it. Those tweets made the rounds from Joe Burrow, and Kansas City fans were quick to step up and throw out those decibel readings. The NFC Championship game, Trey, the Los Angeles Rams and San Francisco 49ers. Man, if there's 2 things that win in playoff football, it's defense and a running game. The Niners have both of those. Kind of a Cinderella run here. Came back from 17 down in Week 18 in Los Angeles. Can they do it again, or are the Rams going to win the rematch here?
Well, a couple of things. Defense wins championships unless you play Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Okay, because Buffalo brought in, seriously, let's just think about this for a second. Buffalo brought into that game the number one overall defense, the number one scoring defense, the number one passing defense, and the number one third down defense. And Patrick Mahomes said so. I mean, that's the outlier that he is. But you're right. In most cases, that's the case. I believe that two things are inside Sean McVay's incredible brain. One is every play he's ever called and the results of it, and the other is Kyle Shanahan. Remember, when they were together on the Washington football team coaching staff, Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator, and two of his position coaches who reported to him were Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur. Look at Kyle Shanahan's record against Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur. McVay has lost 6 straight games to Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. So he is living rent-free next to all those great play calls in Sean McVay's brain. And you mentioned that Week 18 game, right? The Rams were up 17-0 at home. If they just finish their business, they don't have to play the 49ers for the NFC Championship game because the Niners don't make the playoffs, the Saints do. Karma remains undefeated. If they had just handled their business, they might have a much easier path to a home Super Bowl game.
Trey Wingo giving us a few minutes here on the early line, brand ambassador for Caesars Entertainment. And we had to ask you about the local NFL team, Trey. Big news on Tuesday as Sean Payton is stepping away as head coach of the New Orleans Saints. What do you make of Sean stepping away, retiring, however you want to phrase it, and where do you think New Orleans should look next?
Well, I know two things you need to be a really good football team. You need a really good head coach, and you need a really good quarterback. And right now, New Orleans is in desperate need of both. And that's a bad place to be. I'm not saying it can't happen, but the idea of finding another Sean Payton, Drew Brees, that just doesn't happen all the time. It happens rarely. I mean, we just witnessed the greatest golden era of Saints football. The first 39 years of the franchise, they won a grand total of 1 playoff game. They won 9 in the 16 years that Sean Payton and Drew Brees were there. They won a Super Bowl. They won 7 NFC South division titles. That's gone. It was a perfect marriage of a play caller and a playmaker in a city that was ready to embrace everything after Hurricane Katrina. And I don't know what the future holds, but it's not going to be easy. I can promise you that.
That has certainly dominated the news headlines here, as you might imagine, the last couple of days, really starting last Monday after the rumors came out this past weekend. Trey Wingo, Caesars Entertainment brand ambassador. We appreciate the time as always, man. Appreciate the insight and looking forward to great things with Caesars here in Louisiana starting tomorrow.
You got it, man. Remember, we are all Caesars with the Caesars Sportsbook app.